Imagine this. You stand before two paths, each shrouded in mist. One glimmers with promises, but every step feels uncertain, fragile, almost slippery underfoot. The other appears ordinary, perhaps even harsh, but it is solid, unwavering, cut from stone. Which do you choose? For most, hesitation seizes the mind. The heart whispers one way, fear pulls the other. Hours, days, even years can pass, with the spirit caught in paralysis. Yet the Stoic, trained by discipline and guided by clarity, steps forward without trembling. Not because he knows what lies beyond, but because he knows himself. Indecision is a silent poison. It seeps into relationships, careers, and the very marrow of existence. Modern psychology names it analysis paralysis, the anxious loop of weighing endless possibilities. Jung would call it a failure of individuation, the refusal to trust the self, that deeper archetype beneath the clutter of ego voices. A man or woman who cannot decide is chained not by the world, but by their own shadows, those disowned fears and unresolved wounds that whisper, "What if you fail? What if you are wrong?" And so they remain in stasis, watching life pass. The Stoics, centuries before cognitive science, saw this torment. Marcus Aurelius warned himself daily that indecision feeds chaos, that delay allows the passions of others to dictate one's course. Seneca, weary of men who lived in hesitation, declared that life is long if it is lived rightly, but short for those who squander it in wavering. Decision for them was not simply a choice of action. It was an act of alignment with reason, with virtue, with the eternal order of things. Think of a man faced with betrayal in love. One part of him wishes to hold on, clinging to illusions. Another part rages, desiring vengeance. He paces in his chamber, torn between paths. A weaker man lets the storm churn until exhaustion swallows him, making no choice at all. But the Stoic archetype, the disciplined sovereign of his soul, cuts through the confusion. He does not ask, "What outcome will soothe me most?" He asks instead, "What action belongs to me, within my control, and what lies beyond it?" The answer is clear. Fidelity of character is within him. The loyalty of another is not. And so he lets go, not in bitterness, but in clarity. His decision is effortless because it is pure. You too know this paralysis. How many times have you lingered on the edge of a message, a call, a leap into the unknown, your fingers hovering, your chest tight, your mind circling endlessly around possibilities? And when at last you chose, was it with serenity or with a lingering ache of doubt? Understand this. The ache arises not from the choice itself, but from the inner fracture, the refusal to anchor in principle. A Stoic decision is not the product of perfect foresight, but of unwavering principle. Once chosen, it is lived without apology. Jung spoke of the shadow, that darkness within each person that recoils from responsibility. The shadow whispers, "If you delay, perhaps fate will choose for you, and you will never have to risk." But every delay deepens dependence. A woman who cannot decide whether to leave a faithless man slowly becomes a ghost of herself. A man who cannot decide whether to pursue his calling spends his prime years in trivial pursuits, comforting himself with distractions. Each day of hesitation is not neutral. It is a surrender of power. The Stoic stands apart because he sees decision as a battlefield of the soul. Each moment of clarity is a victory against chaos. Each act of alignment is an offering to order. The Romans would call it virtues, the courage to act in accordance with reason, not whim. Modern psychology mirrors this in the concept of congruence, the harmony between inner values and outer action. Congruence feels effortless, even peaceful, while incongruence gnaws like acid. So ask yourself, what do you truly fear in decision? Is it the possibility of failure, or is it the loss of excuse? Once you decide, you can no longer say, "I could have, if only." Once you decide, the responsibility is yours. And this terrifies the ego, which thrives on postponement. Yet responsibility is also liberation. The Stoic knew this paradox, that by owning his choice, he owned his life. Watch the archetype of the Stoic warrior in your mind. He enters battle not because he knows the outcome, but because it is his duty to fight. He does not tremble over what will happen tomorrow. He concerns himself only with whether his hand strikes true today. Decisions, then, are not gambles. They are affirmations of being. Each choice says, "This is who I am." And when identity is rooted in principle, not outcome, confusion dissolves like mist before the sun. You, listening now, are not powerless before the storm of choices. You are only untrained. If you would decide like a Stoic, you must silence the clamoring voices of fear. Silence the insatiable hunger for certainty. Look instead to your core. What is within your control? What is consistent with virtue? What affirms your dignity, even if all else fails? Choose that path and walk it without regret. The confusion will vanish, not because the world became simple, but because your soul became steady. Confusion thrives when the soul fractures into competing voices. One whispers of safety, urging you to cling to what is known. Another seduces with novelty, promising a thrill that may vanish in smoke. Modern psychology sees this as the tension between the limbic system, craving comfort, and the prefrontal cortex, reaching toward higher reasoning. The ancients did not speak in neurological terms, but they knew the war well. To them, the battle was between reason and passion, logos and impulse. The Stoic archetype cuts through this by holding fast to what endures. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself each dawn, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them." Decision, then, is not about external clarity, but inner mastery. When judgment is steady, even a foggy path becomes navigable. When judgment is fractured, even a bright road seems treacherous. Consider the story of two men offered the same opportunity, to lead a group into unknown lands. The first delays, overwhelmed by fear of failure, his mind spiraling with imagined disasters. The second, though uncertain of what lies ahead, decides swiftly. His confidence does not come from knowledge of the future, but from certainty of how he will act in it. The second man is the Stoic. His anchor is not the shifting tide of outcomes, but the unshakable ground of principle. And so, while the first man remains frozen, the second man's footsteps echo forward, shaping destiny through motion. Hesitation is often disguised as prudence. The ego whispers, "You are wise to wait." But beneath the mask, hesitation is the child of fear. Prudence weighs options, then acts. Indecision lingers endlessly, always seeking more signs, more omens, more assurances that never come. To decide like a Stoic is to know when consideration has ended and action must begin. It is the discipline to say, "Enough. The rest is beyond me. This I will do." You have felt this in relationships. Perhaps a partner drifts, their words sweet, but their actions hollow. You sense the fracture, but delay the confrontation, telling yourself you need more proof. Yet every day spent waiting corrodes your dignity. Or perhaps you stand at the threshold of ambition, a project, a business, a calling, but stall in the shadows, polishing your plans while the years slip silently by. This delay does not protect you, it starves you. Each hesitation is a silent betrayal of the self you could have been. The Stoic cuts cleanly, not cruelly, but with the surgeon's hand. He knows that clarity often comes only after the leap. By deciding, he creates new knowledge, new paths. By refusing to decide, he rots in the dungeon of what if. Jung warned of this prison, where the unlived life accumulates as regret, haunting the psyche with ghosts of possibilities. To decide is to live. To delay is to die slowly. The modern self craves certainty, but certainty is a mirage. Even the most carefully chosen path can twist into hardship. Yet hardship is not the enemy. Epictetus taught that the measure of a man is not what happens to him, but how he responds. If the outcome falters, the Stoic does not collapse in self-condemnation. He stands, adjusts, and continues, knowing the dignity was never in the outcome, but in the act of choosing in alignment with reason. Ask yourself now, in the choices you face, what are you truly waiting for? A sign, approval, perfect clarity? None will come. The only clarity you need lies in the question: does this path align with virtue, with dignity, with your highest self? If the answer is yes, step forward. If the answer is no, turn away. The rest is noise. The image of the Stoic is not of a man who always wins, but of a man who never betrays himself. Each decision he makes affirms his essence. Each action reflects his sovereignty. He is not swayed by rumor, nor chained by fear. He moves as the mountain moves, slowly, deliberately, but with a force that cannot be denied. This is the secret. Confusion is not slain by more thinking. It is slain by alignment. When values are clear, choices become inevitable. When values are forgotten, choices become endless torment. To live without confusion is not to know every answer, but to know yourself so deeply that no question can unmoor you. Confusion lingers because most people confuse noise for truth. They chase the whispers of the crowd, the shifting winds of approval, the fleeting shadows of desire, and in that chase, their own voice becomes faint, like an echo in a cavern. A Stoic knows the danger of this dissonance. He understands that to be torn between opinions is to be enslaved twice, once to his own fear and once to the expectations of others. Seneca warned that the man who does not know where he sails finds no wind favorable. Without an anchor in principle, every breeze feels like a command. Modern psychology echoes this in the concept of external locus of control, where the self drifts aimlessly, waiting for someone else to signal permission. Yet the soul is not built to drift. It is built to move with intent. The longer one delays, the heavier the chains of hesitation become, until life itself feels like a prison. Picture the woman standing at the edge of a failing relationship. Each day she senses the quiet betrayal, the hollow gestures. Yet she tells herself, maybe tomorrow it will change. She carries the weight of what is already dead, fearing the cut that would free her. But by refusing to decide, she has already chosen to bleed slowly rather than heal swiftly. This is the cruelty of indecision. It disguises itself as mercy, when in truth, it is surrender. The Stoic spirit calls for another way. He does not wait for certainty, because certainty never comes. He acts with alignment, and this is the paradox. Once you act in accordance with principle, doubt dissolves even in uncertainty. The Jungian path of individuation demands this, that one confronts the shadow of fear and chooses anyway. For every time you step forward, you integrate a fragment of your scattered self. There is power in the cut. Decision is a sword, not a shield. With it, the Stoic slices through illusions, trimming away the excess until only what matters remains. Think of a sculptor striking marble. Each blow seems destructive, but it reveals the form that was always waiting within. In the same way, each decision may seem harsh, but it reveals your true shape, the essence of who you are becoming. You, listening now, may hesitate because you believe that wrong choices define you. But hear this: wrong choices do not define, they refine. Even failure, when chosen with integrity, becomes wisdom. What corrodes the soul is not failure, but avoidance, the choice never made, the life never lived. Jung called these the unlived lives within us, and they haunt more deeply than any wound. The Stoic faces this truth and chooses action over paralysis, clarity over fog. Modern psychology points to the weight of cognitive dissonance, the agony of living in contradiction, saying one thing but doing another, desiring one thing but clinging to its opposite. The longer one delays decision, the more corrosive this dissonance becomes. It eats at the nervous system, breeding anxiety, depression, a restless hunger that no distraction can soothe. The cure is not endless reflection, but alignment, bringing thought, value, and action into one unbroken stream. The Stoic is serene, not because the world bends to his will, but because he bends his will to principle. When a decision is made from virtue, no outcome can poison him. If fortune favors him, he accepts it with gratitude. If adversity strikes, he accepts it with strength. In both, his essence remains untouched. He is never divided, never at war with himself. Now consider yourself again. How often have you lingered in decisions, not because you lacked knowledge, but because you feared the loss of possibility? Every choice, after all, is a death of alternatives. But this is precisely why the Stoic chooses swiftly. To cling to infinite doors is to remain forever in the hallway. To choose is to walk into life, fully, without apology. Understand this. Clarity is not a gift. It is a discipline. It is forged in silence, when you strip away the voices of fear and vanity. It is forged in honesty, when you admit what aligns with dignity and what does not. And it is forged in courage, when you act upon that clarity without delay. The more you practice, the more effortless it becomes. Decision then is no longer a torment, but a rhythm, a steady march through the fog. Confusion is often worshipped as complexity. People mistake tangled thoughts for depth, endless weighing for wisdom. Yet both Stoicism and psychology reveal the opposite. Clarity emerges not from adding more, but from stripping away. The Stoic cuts what is unnecessary, while Jung insists individuation requires facing the shadow and discarding the false selves we wear to please the world. Both paths lead to one truth: simplicity is power. When you look closely at indecision, you will see it is rarely about the choice itself. It is about identity. If I choose this, you whisper to yourself, what does it make me? The ego trembles because each decision is a death of one possibility and the birth of another self. To refuse is to keep every mask intact. To choose is to shed them until only the true face remains, and that shedding hurts. But the pain of decision is also the pain of becoming. Imagine the archetype of the warrior philosopher. He sits before the fire, weighing two paths: loyalty to a corrupt master or rebellion in the name of justice. If he hesitates too long, both paths will collapse into ruin. His silence would become complicity, his indecision a choice of cowardice. And so, he chooses. not because the outcome is assured, but because in the act of deciding, he declares what he is. He does not wait for certainty. He acts because honor demands it. Modern psychology names this congruence, the alignment of behavior with one's deepest values. When you live incongruently, anxiety follows like a shadow. The nervous system tightens, the mind ruminates, sleep fractures. But the moment you act in alignment, even through fear, the body relaxes. Clarity feels like release because it ends the civil war inside. You know this feeling, that sudden exhale after a hard choice, when the torment of doubt dissolves, even if hardship remains. That is the freedom of congruence. How often, though, do people flee from this freedom? They entangle themselves in endless options. Another job application, another dating app match, another scenario rehearsed in the mind at 3 a.m, all in the hope that one path will appear so flawless, so riskless, that choice will feel like certainty. But no such path exists. Waiting for it is waiting for a God who never comes. The Stoic refuses this waiting. He embraces the imperfect. He knows that a choice made with integrity is stronger than 1,000 imagined scenarios. Epictetus taught that it is not external events, but our judgments of them, that disturb us. The same is true of decision. The torment lies not in the choice, but in the judgment that we must avoid all pain, all risk, all loss. Once you discard that illusion, choice becomes light, almost effortless. You too can feel this shift. Think of the last time you made a decision swiftly, in alignment with your values. Perhaps you cut off a toxic friendship in a single sentence. Perhaps you walked into an uncertain career leap with a calm heart. Did you feel weaker for acting or stronger? That surge of strength was not arrogance. It was the psyche rejoicing at being whole again. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming is impossible without deciding. Each decision is a sculptor's strike against the marble of fate. Each refusal to decide is a dulling of the chisel. You are either carving or you are eroding. And the Stoic knows, even a flawed carving bears more dignity than a stone untouched by courage. So look again at the fog that unsettles you. Ask not for the mist to part. Ask instead, who am I, and which choice affirms that truth? Once answered, the path emerges not in certainty, but in strength. The world remains complex, but your spirit is simple, and that simplicity cuts through all confusion. Confusion only appears daunting when you mistake it for reality. In truth, confusion is a projection, the mind's storm cast upon the sky of your choices. Beneath the chaos, the path is never hidden. It is you who hides from it. Jung wrote that what we resist controls us, and so long as you resist responsibility, indecision becomes your master. But when you turn and face it, the mist thins and the horizon reappears. The Stoic does not romanticize confusion. He names it for what it is, the refusal to see. Clarity, then, is not something gained from the world, but uncovered within the self. To decide like a Stoic is not to demand a perfect world, but to demand integrity from yourself. That demand is simple, though rarely easy. The soul craves certainty, but the Stoic reminds it. Certainty is for the dead. The living must act with courage, not guarantees. Think of a young leader faced with betrayal in his council. Half the advisors whisper one course, half another. His chest tightens. His mind swirls, but then he remembers. If he waits, chaos will decide for him, and chaos serves no one. He steps forward, choosing one side, not because the path is sure, but because the act of choosing restores order. In that instant, his people breathe again. The clarity was not in the situation, it was in the resolve. Psychology mirrors this truth. Researchers speak of decision fatigue, the exhaustion born not from action, but from endless postponement. Each delay drains the psyche, each hesitation burns unseen energy. The body grows restless, the mind dull. Yet when you finally decide, energy floods back into the system. It is as if life itself rewards courage, punishing only delay. This is why the Stoic, far from reckless, actually conserves his strength. He decides swiftly, then acts, then rests in the peace of congruence. Have you felt this peace? That moment after the hard choice is made, when the stomach unclenches, when the air seems lighter, when even the pain of consequence feels preferable to the ache of uncertainty. That is the taste of sovereignty. Every time you postpone, you starve yourself of that freedom. Every time you act, you feed it. The shadow, however, resists this. It whispers that waiting keeps you safe, that by postponing, you can avoid regret. But the truth is harsher. Postponement itself becomes regret. Jung called the shadow not evil, but unlived potential. Each decision avoided feeds that darkness until your life is haunted by the ghosts of paths never taken. The Stoic faces the shadow and says, "Better the pain of action than the decay of avoidance." And so clarity is not about always choosing right. It is about always choosing aligned. When your values are true, no outcome can undo you. Failures become teachers, losses become rites of passage, and victories become humble gifts. But indecision breeds nothing but corrosion. So ask yourself now, not later, which choice affirms your dignity? Which path strengthens your character, regardless of outcome? Which option leaves you standing taller, even if the world collapses around you? That is your path. That is the decision. All else is noise. The Stoic knows this, that confusion cannot coexist with principle. When values are set, choices are already made. He does not need to consult the stars or the crowd. He consults his own soul, and in that counsel, there is no debate, only the quiet certainty of a man who lives by what cannot be shaken. Confusion always seeks to lure you into endless delay, but the Stoic learns to hear it as nothing more than background noise. It is the murmur of the crowd inside your own head, the residue of every fear you've inherited, every demand you've absorbed. The modern psyche mistakes that murmur for wisdom, but it is only static. The discipline is in refusing to grant it authority. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Such simplicity cuts like a blade through the fog. Decisions become unbearable when you attempt to weigh every possible future. They become effortless when you measure them against a single principle. In this way, the Stoic shrinks the chaos of 1,000 possibilities into the clarity of one standard: virtue. Imagine a young woman torn between two lives, one of ease, one of challenge. Her family urges her to choose safety. Her own heart urges her toward growth. Fear builds a case for both sides, and so she drifts, suspended. But clarity does not come from the external chorus. It comes when she turns inward and asks, which choice honors my dignity? Which path, if followed, allows me to respect myself even if I fail? In that moment, the mist dissolves. The harder path, though frightening, affirms her essence. And once she sees this, hesitation collapses. Modern psychology recognizes this as self-determination. A person aligned with intrinsic values experiences vitality, even in struggle, while one ruled by extrinsic pressures feels hollow, even in success. The Stoics anticipated this truth 2 millennia ago. They taught that fortune is indifferent, but character is sovereign. The decision aligned with virtue is always the right one, regardless of outcome, because it strengthens the soul. Hesitation, then, is not a matter of logic. It is a matter of courage. Most people are not confused about what they want. They are afraid to claim it. They bury this fear beneath endless thinking, analysis, distraction. Yet beneath it all, they know. The Stoic calls this moment out. He refuses to let fear masquerade as rationality. To him, the worst sin is not error, but cowardice. And what of regret? Here lies the deepest snare. People postpone because they fear looking back and wishing they had chosen differently. But regret is born, not from choices made in integrity, but from choices avoided. A wrong turn walked with courage becomes a story of growth. But a choice forever postponed festers, becoming the wound that never heals. Jung called this the burden of the unlived life, a shadow that grows heavier with each passing year. So the Stoic dares to choose, not because he is free of fear, but because he is loyal to something higher. He knows that a person cannot build themselves while remaining endlessly divided. Each decision is an act of unity, a hammer blow forging the self from fragments. Clarity, then, is not a feeling, it is an act. You create it by choosing. Ask yourself now, which choice restores your strength, even if it brings hardship? Which path aligns with who you aspire to be, not who you fear to remain? The answer is already in you. The longer you delay, the quieter it becomes. But if you are still, if you silence the noise of fear and the chatter of ego, the answer will rise, steady and undeniable. And when it does, you must act. For the Stoic knows that decisions decay if left unclaimed. Courage fades, the shadow strengthens, and the moment passes. Clarity is a gift, but it is fleeting. To honor it, you must seize it when it comes. And by doing so, you strengthen the habit of choosing with power. Confusion feeds on your hunger for perfection. You want the ideal choice, the flawless outcome, the certainty that no regret will follow. But life was never built on perfection. It was built on tension. To live is to risk. To decide is to lose one path for the sake of another. The Stoic embraces this tension as the price of freedom. He does not wait for the flawless door to open, for no such door exists. He simply chooses, and by choosing, he creates his freedom. Seneca once wrote that no man is more miserable than the one who hesitates between two courses. This misery is not born from the choice itself, but from the slow self-betrayal of refusing to move. Each day of hesitation chips away at strength. The mind grows restless, the heart heavy, the will fragile. Yet once a decision is made, even if harsh, the spirit expands. It is as though the soul recognizes movement as life itself. Picture the archetype of the Stoic commander on the eve of battle. Scouts bring him conflicting reports. Advisors argue endlessly. Fear thickens the air, but the commander does not wait for perfect knowledge. He cannot. He looks within, measures the decision against duty, and strikes the table. We march at dawn. His men rise with new fire, for clarity, even in uncertainty, is power. The enemy may still strike, fate may still wound, but in that instant his army is won, not fractured. Modern psychology echoes this in studies of leadership. Teams thrive not when every detail is perfect, but when direction is clear. Uncertainty breeds paralysis, while decision breeds energy. The same truth applies within the psyche. When you hesitate, your inner voices bicker endlessly, but when you decide, they unite. That unity, even in difficulty, brings relief. Perhaps you know this in your own life. The job you lingered over, the relationship you hesitated to end, the opportunity you replayed in your mind. How much suffering came not from the act itself, but from the endless waiting, and how quickly peace returned once you finally chose, even if the choice was painful. That is the paradox. Pain of action is finite, pain of hesitation infinite. The Stoic calls hesitation the enemy, not because it brings failure, but because it robs you of life. To hesitate is to exist in limbo, half alive, half dead. To decide is to burn fully, to stand in the storm of consequence with your head unbowed. And in that burning, you are purified. You are revealed to yourself. Jung might say that in each decision, you meet your shadow. You confront the part of you that fears loss, shame, rejection. By choosing, you deny the shadow its rule. You integrate it, master it, and grow stronger. The unlived self shrinks. The true self expands. Every decision, then, is not just about circumstances. It is about becoming. So understand this. The measure of clarity is not whether you avoid regret, but whether you act from alignment. The Stoic asks only, does this decision accord with reason and virtue? If yes, he acts. If no, he refrains. And the rest he leaves to fate, knowing that outcomes lie beyond his control. You, listening now, may stand at a crossroads. You may be waiting for a sign, for some external force to choose for you. But the sign you seek will never come. Life itself is the sign, pressing you forward. To wait is to refuse the gift. To act is to honor it. When you decide like a Stoic, you do not cut through confusion because the world is simple. You cut through confusion because you are simple, aligned, steady, indivisible. In that simplicity lies a force greater than certainty. It is the force of sovereignty. Confusion weakens most men and women because they cling to what is not theirs to control. They tremble before outcomes, obsess over others' reactions, measure their worth against shifting tides. But the Stoic, trained in discipline, knows that the only domain worth guarding is the inner citadel. Epictetus made it plain. Some things are up to us, and some are not. To blur the boundary is to invite endless torment. To honor it is to walk in freedom. Modern psychology reflects the same truth. Anxiety spikes when the mind fixates on what cannot be controlled: approval, fortune, fate. But serenity blooms when attention narrows to what is truly within reach: your choices, your words, your actions. Confusion thrives when the field of concern expands to infinity. It dies when the field of control is brought into focus. Imagine a man consumed by the decision of whether his beloved will remain loyal. He watches her every gesture, interprets every silence, turns sleepless at every imagined betrayal. His torment is endless because he has yoked his peace to what is not his to command. The Stoic archetype sees the folly at once. Loyalty is hers to give or withdraw. His to decide is only whether he will stand with dignity or walk away with honor. By returning to his sphere of control, clarity re-emerges like the sun breaking through storm clouds. You may sense this in your own life. Think of the last time you agonized over how someone would respond to you. Hours, days wasted rehearsing every scenario, only to realize that none of them unfolded as imagined. Yet the energy was real, the anxiety real. This is the price of forgetting your sphere, and the liberation, once you remember it, is staggering. To decide only within your control is to slice confusion into silence. Jung might describe this as reclaiming projection. Much of your indecision is not about the choice itself, but about how others will see you because of it. You project your worth into their eyes, and then you hesitate, waiting for their gaze to bless your path. The Stoic dismantles this illusion. Worth, for him, is not on loan. It is forged within. Once reclaimed, the projections dissolve and decision is clear. Seneca taught that life is long if you know how to use it, but short if you waste it in hesitation. Each delayed decision consumes your most finite resource, time, and time is not owed to you in endless supply. This truth is severe, but liberating. You are mortal, and therefore, you must not delay. Death stands near, and each decision postponed is a portion of life surrendered to nothing. The Stoic embraces this urgency, not in panic, but in reverence. To decide swiftly is to honor life as sacred. Do not mistake this for recklessness. The Stoic considers, weighs, and reflects, but he knows when reflection has ended and cowardice begins. He draws the line firmly, to think long enough to align with principle, but not so long that the chance to act decays. For opportunities, like seasons, do not wait forever. There is a window, and then it closes. To hesitate is to let the harvest rot in the field. Ask yourself, how many of your current torments come not from what you must decide, but from the fact that you will not decide? How much of your pain is self-created by the delay? You tell yourself you are waiting for clarity, but clarity does not come before decision. It comes after. The Stoic steps, and in stepping, the fog parts. The hesitant waits, and in waiting, the fog thickens. This is the secret the ancients knew. To decide is to live. To postpone endlessly is to be half dead. When you choose in accordance with virtue, the outcome matters less than the act itself. You grow stronger, clearer, more whole. And this, not external fortune, is the essence of a life free of confusion. Confusion drains life because it keeps you caught in half measures. To hesitate is to live neither here nor there, to walk with one foot planted and the other suspended in air. The Stoic sees this state as the most dangerous of all, because it deceives the soul into believing it still has time. Seneca's warning echoes across centuries. While you deliberate how to live, you are already living, and your life is passing. Jung framed it differently, but no less sharply. He spoke of the unlived life, the shadow of all that could have been but never was, the paths not walked because fear wore the mask of caution. Every avoided decision adds weight to this shadow. Slowly, it presses down on the psyche until the soul feels split, burdened by regret for what it never dared. The Stoic refuses this weight. He chooses, even knowing the risk, because to act is to keep the soul whole. Imagine the archetype of the woman at the crossroad of her destiny. She has been offered a chance to leave the comfort of her father's home, to pursue a calling beyond her city walls. Friends advise caution, family urges patience, fear whispers of ruin. She waits, night after night, staring into the fire. Yet in her silence, her strength leaks away. And then, one evening, she sees with clarity. Indecision is already a choice to betray her own longing. With steady breath, she gathers her cloak and steps into the dark. The road may wound her, but her spirit breathes again. This is the essence of Stoic decision, to live aligned, not anesthetized. Modern psychology calls this agency, the felt sense that your choices matter. Without agency, life feels imposed upon you. Depression, anxiety, and apathy often root themselves in the soil of indecision. But agency blooms the moment you claim your decision as your own, no matter how uncertain the road. This is why decisive people often radiate vitality. It is not that they never err, but that they refuse to fracture themselves by hesitation. Think now of the weight you carry. How many unfinished decisions whisper in your chest? The relationship you avoid defining, the career path you postpone, the truth you know but do not speak. Each is a stone in the pocket of your soul, dragging you toward exhaustion. And yet, every time you decide with clarity, a stone falls away. You grow lighter, freer, more alive. The Stoic understood this as liberation. Decisions anchored in virtue require no apology. Once made, they are carried with quiet dignity, regardless of how the world reacts. For the Stoic does not ask, "Will others approve?" He asks only, "Am I aligned with reason and integrity?" This is why his steps are steady, why his eyes are calm. He does not live in fragments, but in wholeness. Here lies the core of freedom, not in predicting the future, but in mastering the present choice. You cannot control the ripples of fate, but you can control the hand that casts the stone. Once you grasp this, confusion shrinks to its true size, an illusion, a trick of fear. So remember this, when hesitation next seizes you. Ask not, "Which path will spare me regret?" Ask instead, "Which path allows me to remain whole, even if I lose?" That is the Stoic's way. That is how you cut through confusion, not by predicting tomorrow, but by commanding today. Confusion persists when the soul forgets its anchor. The modern mind believes that clarity is found in predicting every outcome, gathering every fact, and eliminating all risk. But clarity is not foresight. It is alignment. The Stoic knows this. He does not demand the fog to lift before moving. He demands only that his step be guided by reason and principle. Once that demand is met, he moves, whether the sky is bright or storm-filled. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that each man has his guiding star within him, and that to betray it is to lose himself. Jung, centuries later, revealed the same truth through individuation, the process of becoming whole by following the deep self, not the ego's shallow fears. Both voices echo into one truth. Your compass is already within. The tragedy is not that you lack it, but that you do not trust it. Think of the archetype of the craftsman at his bench. The wood before him is flawed, full of knots and fractures. If he hesitates endlessly, waiting for perfect timber, he will never create. But if he accepts the imperfection, trusts his skill, and strikes his chisel with confidence, beauty emerges. The Stoic approaches decisions the same way. He does not demand perfect conditions. He demands courage, discipline, and trust in the craft of his own soul. Confusion deepens when you give authority to every external voice. Friends tell you one thing, family another, your own fears yet another. Soon you are a puppet strung by contradictions. The Stoic cuts the strings. He listens, but he does not obey the chorus. His allegiance is to the inner citadel, where values are sovereign. This is why his decisions may appear harsh to others, but serene to him. He knows that peace purchased through self-betrayal is no peace at all. Modern psychology teaches that humans are wired to seek approval. It soothes the nervous system to know one is accepted. But if approval governs decisions, the soul becomes fragile. Each choice must be checked against countless eyes, and the weight of their gaze becomes unbearable. To free yourself from confusion, you must reclaim your authority. You must decide as though no one is watching, for only then do you truly act as yourself. Ask yourself now, if no one else's opinion mattered, what would you choose? That question alone often clears the fog, for beneath the noise of fear and the hunger for approval, the truth is already known. What remains is courage. Seneca taught that fortune is beyond us, but virtue is always ours. Outcomes are indifferent, but integrity is not. This perspective turns decision into liberation. You no longer ask, "What will happen if I choose this?" You ask, "What kind of person do I become if I choose this?" And in that shift, confusion dies. You, standing in hesitation, may feel as though choosing risks too much. But hear this: not choosing risks everything. Each delay consumes your finite time, erodes your vitality, and swells the shadow of the unlived life. The Stoic refuses this slow death. He chooses, not recklessly, but firmly, knowing that even loss is better than paralysis. Clarity belongs not to those who know every path, but to those who dare to walk one. You cannot escape risk. You can only choose what kind of risk shapes you. Will it be the risk of action, which forges strength, or the risk of hesitation, which corrodes the soul? The Stoic already knows his answer. Confusion is the great thief of time, but it is also the greatest test of sovereignty. To live undecided is to hand your life over to chance, to the moods of others, to the tides of fortune. The Stoic refuses this surrender. He would rather step boldly into difficulty than remain passive in the fog. For him, indecision is worse than error because it leaves him divided. A wrong step can be corrected. A step never taken imprisons the soul forever. Marcus Aurelius captured this with chilling precision. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Mortality itself is the sharpest lens. Confusion dissolves when you remember that time is short. Every delayed decision is not neutral. It is a piece of life abandoned. You are not waiting for clarity. You are trading hours of existence for nothing. Jung's psychology points to the same urgency. The unlived life accumulates like a shadow behind you. Each avoided choice feeds it until it grows larger than you. People fear making the wrong choice, but in truth, their greatest fear should be of never choosing at all. That shadow will pursue them into old age, whispering, "You could have been more." The Stoic silences that voice by acting now, even in uncertainty, because he knows that a flawed life lived with courage is nobler than a perfect life never begun. Picture the archetype of the emperor at dusk. Reports flood his table. Wars at the borders, unrest in the cities, betrayal among allies. He cannot solve them all tonight, yet he must decide. If he waits, chaos grows. If he acts, order is restored. He sharpens his mind to what lies within his command, discards what does not, and signs his decree. The world may still wound him, but the act itself affirms his reign. Clarity is not the absence of chaos, but the presence of command. Modern psychology calls this locus of control. Those who anchor themselves in what they can decide feel empowered, while those who scatter their will across the uncontrollable drown in helplessness. Confusion thrives in the external locus, worrying about how others will react, how fate will bend, how chance will strike. Clarity thrives in the internal locus, choosing how to act, how to speak, how to respond. Ask yourself, how much of your hesitation comes from fear of outcomes beyond your reach? You wait because you want certainty, but certainty belongs to the gods, not to men. The Stoic asks only for mastery over himself. Once he has that, no outcome can undo him. And so the final secret is revealed. To decide like a Stoic is not to guarantee success, but to guarantee sovereignty. When you act from principle, confusion cannot touch you. You may lose fortune, love, even life, but you do not lose yourself. That is the only clarity that matters.